the 60s, Eastside High School is one of the top schools in Paterson, New Jersey. Joe is a teacher there, and his class loves him because he teaches important things with kindness and fun competitions. One morning, his class is interrupted by fellow teacher Frank, who tells him they're holding a union executive board meeting without them. Angry, Joe storms into the meeting and yells at everyone for not supporting his reform ideas, and always backing down when the local government asks them to stay quiet. Tired of Joe's attitude, the board decides to transfer him to another school. 20 years later, Eastside High has become so bad that it's called a cauldron of violence. The building has lost its shine, and the students don't know what good behavior is. Bullying and violence are everywhere. They don't listen to teachers, and even beat them up when they try to help, and illegal substances and weapons are traded like candy. Most of the students can't pass the basic skills test, and this is bad news for Mayor Bottman, who doesn't want to lose the school to state control because it'll cost him the election. Frank, now school superintendent, and Mr. Rosenberg, the school board lawyer, realize the only solution. They must bring Joe back. Bottman dislikes the idea, but agrees because he has no choice. Frank and Rosenberg visit Joe, offering him the position of principal at Eastside, but Joe refuses, saying he knows the mayor only wants to save himself, not the kids. However, Frank changes his mind by pointing out that Joe hasn't made a difference so far with his Crazy Joe routine, and shouldn't take that to his grave. The next day, Joe arrives at Eastside as the new principal. He holds a meeting with the other teachers and immediately asserts his authority, saying he's the only one that speaks in his meetings. After asking for a list of every student involved in criminal activities, he orders the custodian to clean the walls and make any student in detention help. Mr. Darnell, the English teacher, is demoted to assistant of the football coach. There will be guards in the hallways to help stop the violence, and all teachers must focus on getting the students ready for their next standardized test, because the school needs 75% to pass, and last time they did less than 40. Next, Joe calls a school assembly, where all the troublemakers from the list are put on stage. When Joe comes over, he bumps into Kanisha, who is happy to see him because he used to be her elementary school principal. Joe gets on stage and asks for silence, but nobody pays attention, and the troublemakers laugh when he asks them to sing the school song. Seeing them as hopeless, Joe decides to expel all the troublemakers, promising the rest of the students that nobody will bother them anymore. Security removes all the students from the stage, and this is enough to calm everyone else down, especially when Joe tells them they could be next if they don't study hard. In the afternoon, Joe has a meeting with all the parents. Leonna, the mother of one of the expelled kids, is furious about what happened, and many parents support her. But Joe stands firm and gives a speech about a few bad apples spoiling the whole bunch. He explains he expelled 300 kids to save 2,700, and that he promised God he would save this school. This speech wins him the support of almost every parent, but Leonna stays angry. The next day, Joe arrives at school to find a kid waiting for him. Sams was expelled and now tries to tell Joe he made a mistake because he didn't do anything. But Joe knows he's lying and takes him to the roof with him. He calls Sams a coward for not telling his parents he was expelled, and tells him consuming those illegal substances will kill him. So if he wants to die this badly, he should jump. Sams obviously refuses, and promises he'll do better, and Joe agrees to give him a second chance. But if he messes up again, he'll be out for good. During lunch, Joe goes from table to table hearing what the students have to say, and offering some advice. He's happy to see Ray is wearing a suit, which sets an excellent example, unlike Sams and his friends who dress sloppily. When he notices them bothering a girl, Joe makes them stand up and calls out their clothes choice in front of everyone, then asks them to sing the school song. He also reminds the entire room that nobody should move during the school song, so when Darnell bends over to pick up some trash, Joe sends him to his office. The boys don't know the lyrics anyway, causing Joe to give them detention and inform everyone that from now on, they all should be ready to sing the school song on command, or there'll be consequences. Afterward, Joe goes to see the music teacher, Elliot, to tell her about the new rule. Elliot accepts it, but says she'll teach the school song after they're done training for an upcoming choir concert in New York. The kids are practicing Mozart, and Elliot would like their work to be respected. She calls out Joe, saying he doesn't like other adults standing up to him, and Joe reacts by firing her and canceling the concert so the students can concentrate on the upcoming test. From now on, the pianist Mrs. Powers will be in charge of the music class. Afterward, during his meeting with Darnell, Joe gets called out again. Darnell thinks he's being treated like trash and wants the principal to remember these are his students too. This ends with Darnell getting suspended. Vice Principal Joan tries to make Joe see reason, explaining Darnell is more than just a coach and that nobody understands what Joe is doing. But Joe responds that's exactly how he likes it. The day of the practice test comes, and all the students fill it out the best they can as the teachers keep a close eye on them. Joe doesn't want to wait long for the results, so he sends Joan to the school board to ask for the letter directly. One morning, the special presentation a student is doing for the local press is interrupted by a fight in the cafeteria. One of the expelled boys came back and is beating up Ray, and he's also got a knife. Joe quickly catches him and wonders how he got in. Security tells him someone must have let him in from the inside. At that moment, Joe decides all school doors will be locked and chained. Sometime later, Joe finds Kenesha feeling upset. She's a smart girl, but her grades haven't been good since she lost her home because her mother doesn't want her. Determined to help, Joe takes Joan to see Kenesha's mother at her home. The mother explains she had Kenesha when she was a teenager, so she had to drop her normal life to work. Nowadays she's trying to get clean, but that puts her in an awful state of mind. That's why she thought it would be better to send Kenesha to child services, but she never stopped wanting her around or loving her. Joe promises to help her find a better job and a nicer place to live as long as she takes Kenesha back and helps her stay focused on her studies. The news of the chained doors reaches the newspapers, and Leonna takes the chance to take the complaint to the school board. Frank scolds Joe for behaving this crazy, mentioning that Leonna is organizing a group to remove him and the fire chief is on her side. He thinks Joe is alienating everyone like he did with his wife. So now he'll write an apology letter to Elliot and Darnell, because if Joe wants to be respected as an authority, he should start by respecting authority as well. Darnell is reinstated, but the problems aren't over yet. The fire chief shows up at the school with the press, so Joe gets him to leave by threatening him with a bat. Joan tries to express her concerns over this attitude, but as usual, she's ignored. To Joe's disappointment, the next time he sees Ray is when the boy comes to say goodbye because he can't stay in this school anymore. Later, Joe finds Sams and his friends goofing around in the bathroom. He makes them sing the school song and is shocked to hear a beautiful rendition done in the style of a church choir. The boys admit it was Powers that taught them this, so Joe goes to see her to congratulate her and ask her to teach everyone this version of the song from now on. The results of the practice test arrive, and Joe is disappointed to see they only scored 33%. He calls all the teachers to the gym and tells them their inefficiency is to blame for these poor results, so they have to work harder. Joe wants to start a tutoring program and an extra course on remedial reading on Saturdays, but a teacher points out it's hard to make the kids come on weekends. His plan is that they'll go to every student's house and talk to their parents to get them involved, perhaps even invite them to come too if they don't know how to read. The following weeks, teachers and students work hard to get ready for the test, and Joe's as involved with his students as possible. This is still not enough for Leonna, who together with the fire chief goes to talk directly to Bottman. Frank and Rosenberg try to defend Joe, but Bottman kicks them out of the meeting and reaches an agreement with Leonna so she doesn't convince the town not to vote for him. Bottman will get Joe fired, and Leonna will gather people's support for his campaign. Later in the bathroom, Bottman tells the fire chief that they'll arrest Joe for the illegal chains after the test, unaware that Rosenberg is in one of the stalls and hears everything. Rosenberg informs Frank of this, and they go to warn Joe, who quickly comes up with a plan. When the security guards see the chief coming, they'll call code 10 through the walkie-talkies, and the teachers can temporarily remove the chains. Afterward, Joan tries to talk to Joe about the progress of their reading program, but he tells her he's too busy to look into it now, and that his vice principal should do things without needing him all the time. At the end of the day, Joan asks Joe for a transfer, explaining how frustrating it is to work with him. She calls him an egomaniacal windbag that whips people who can't fight back and points out half the staff feels the same way. They just haven't walked out yet because they care about the kids. Joan, however, has had enough of his lack of respect and support for the teachers, so she wants out. The next day before assembly, Joe gives Joan her transfer papers. Then he gives the kids a speech about the bad fame the school has in town, inspiring them to prove they're not savages. He also shows his gratitude towards the teachers, which he gives Joan credit for. Next, Powers sings "Lean on Me," and the kids sing along, excited to show the government they aren't inferior. Seeing the whole school come together, Joan decides to stay. On the day of the test, the students fill the exam with confidence. But there's also a school board meeting coming, and Leonna can't wait anymore, so Bottman finally gives the fire chief permission to get a court order. Meanwhile at school, Kenesha discovers she's pregnant, but her boyfriend doesn't believe he's the father, even if she swears he's the only boy she's been with. Joe offers his support and promises they'll find some other options, but their talk is interrupted by a guard announcing the arrival of the fire chief with Leonna and reporters. Calling code 10, Joe tries to get the chains removed, but the chief is ready and has a recording of this code, so Joe gets arrested for violating the fire code, leaving Joan in charge. That night, the school board holds a meeting. Frank tries to defend Joe's work, but Leonna points out the school only got 33% during the practice test, meaning Joe actually failed at his work. The meeting is suddenly interrupted when every single student shows up demanding Joe be released. Bottman knows it'll look bad if they fire a man with such support, so he talks to Joe, asking him to tell the students to leave. When Joe refuses, Bottman pulls out the big guns and explains the cops are getting ready outside. If the students riot, things may get violent. Joe agrees to talk to them, but only for the sake of their safety, not because he thinks they're doing anything wrong. When he comes out, Leonna is talking to the kids, but she's only getting insulted and reminded of all the things Joe did for the school. He's touched when he hears them call him a father, but he's still worried about the police, so Joe takes over and reminds them to respect the law. His speech is suddenly interrupted by Joan, who brings the results of the tests with excellent news. The school has passed. As everyone celebrates, Joe tells Bottman that he and the state can go to hell. Joe gets to keep his job, and the students end the night singing the school song.